I knew something was off the second she called it a serious dinner. Ashley never did serious. She did sarcastic. She did dismissive. She did that fake laugh she used on sales clerks when she wanted a discount. But serious? No. Still, I showed up. Pressed shirt, clean shave, the works. Walked into the restaurant expecting maybe she wanted to talk about counseling or finally admit she'd been distant. What I got instead was Chase Donovan. Tight black shirt, cologne strong enough to fumigate the block, smirk that could curdle milk, sitting right next to my wife, her hand way too close to his thigh. She looked up, smiled like a cat introducing the mouse to the snake. "Logan, this is Chase. You've heard me talk about him from work." Oh, I'd heard. Every week. The mentor, the inspiration, the guy who gets her. I'd pictured him 100 times. Just never thought I'd meet him over wine and candlelight, like the world's worst double date. I sat, forced to smile, my fists curled under the table. Then Chase leaned in, eyes locked on mine like we were in some dusty western. "I'll make this simple," he said, smooth as a scam. "You've got two options. Leave quietly, or face me like a man." Ashley didn't flinch. She actually smiled. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a conversation. This was theater. I was the unwitting extra in their little breakup scene. I took a breath, held his gaze. "You want your teeth whole," I said quietly. "Or in pieces?" The room went dead quiet except for the blood pounding in my ears. Chase grinned. That kind of grin people wear when they think they're about to win something. I stood, leaned just far enough over the table for him to realize I wasn't bluffing. Then I grabbed him by the collar and introduced his face to the tableware. Plates clattered, wine spilled like a crime scene, and his smug expression evaporated into shock. Ashley shrieked, clawing at my arm. "Logan, stop. You're embarrassing me." Embarrassing her. After she'd set me up to be humiliated in public. After she'd made me the sideshow to her new leading man. Security pulled me off before I could make the point permanent. Chase stayed slumped in his chair, rubbing his jaw, no longer auditioning for the role of alpha male. Outside, the cold air hit me, and so did the truth. This was never meant to be a reconciliation. This was the grand finale of an affair that had probably been running longer than I wanted to imagine. When I got home, the house felt different. Not the furniture, the air. It smelled faintly of her perfume and something else. Something muskier. I walked into the bedroom. Bed perfectly made. Tight corners. She never made it like that for me. That's when I knew. I wasn't coming home to my wife anymore. I was coming home to a crime scene where the weapon was still warm. My phone buzzed while I was still standing in the bedroom. A message from her. "You didn't have to do that. You embarrassed yourself. Not are you okay? Not let's talk." Just a cold verdict. Like she was the judge and I was the fool who dared to object. That was the exact moment the switch flipped. I didn't feel jealous anymore. I felt precise. I started looking. Not because I suspected, I already knew, but because I wanted proof. Something tangible I could hold in my hands when the time came to end this farce. The closet gave me the first clue, a pair of expensive red heels I'd never seen before. She hadn't worn heels for me in months. Then her vanity, specifically, the tablet she never locked. She thought my trust was permanent. She was wrong. The first photo nearly took the air out of my lungs. Her, barely dressed, in a hotel mirror I didn't recognize. Date stamp? Last weekend. The same weekend she claimed to be at her friend Lacey's baby shower. Next photo. Chase, shirtless, brushing his teeth in the background. I kept scrolling. Messages. Voice notes. Her calling him daddy. Him calling her my little secret. And one line from her that hit harder than any punch I'd thrown that night. "He still thinks we're going through a rough patch. Poor baby. Poor baby." That was me, the placeholder husband they mocked between hotel stays. The sun was just starting to cut through the blinds when she came breezing in like nothing had happened. Hair tied up, coffee in hand, scrolling her phone with that half smirk she used to save for strangers who told her she looked too young to be married. She didn't even glance at me until I spoke. "Morning," I said, flat as the kitchen counter between us. Her eyes flicked up, scanning me like she was checking if I'd cooled down from last night's little performance. "Morning," she replied, cautious, then went right back to scrolling. I slid the tablet across the table toward her. The screen was still on, messages open, timestamp glowing like a neon confession. Her thumb froze mid-scroll. "What's this?" she asked, tone sharp enough to cut glass. "You tell me." She stared at the screen, then at me. No gasp. No tears. No, I can explain. Just that little scoff she used whenever she thought she was winning. Why were you snooping through my stuff? That was her opening move. Not denial, not apology, offense. Classic Ashley. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. You lied to me. For months. You humiliated me in public. You brought him into our lives and treated me like garbage while you. I tapped the tablet. Played dress up for your little secret. You're overreacting, she said, actually rolling her eyes. We've been done for a long time, Logan. You're just too proud to admit it. And Chase is your solution? The guy whose jaw nearly met a salad plate last night. She smirked, but it didn't reach her eyes. At least he makes me feel something. I sat back in my chair, studying her. So this was the plan? Drag me to dinner, parade your replacement in front of me, and hope I just disappear. Would have been cleaner, she admitted. There it was. No pretense left. Just the truth, cold and blunt, like everything else between us had become. I let a slow breath out. You think you've been playing me? You think this whole time, I've just been sitting here clueless? She crossed her arms. Haven't you? I smiled. Not a happy smile, the kind of smile that makes people step back without realizing why. Not even close. Her brow furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I stood, walked past her to the bedroom, and came back with the black leather folder I'd kept hidden under a stack of old tax returns in my desk. I dropped it on the table. She didn't reach for it at first, just stared like it might explode. What's this? Evidence, I said. 3 months' worth. Screenshots. Bank statements. Hotel receipts. Enough to make sure you don't walk away with a dime more than the law says you get. Finally, she opened it. The smirk slid right off her face. You've been spying on me, she hissed. No, I corrected. I've been preparing. There's a difference. She flipped through the pages, color draining from her cheeks as she realized exactly how airtight my case was. Chase's name on the hotel folio. Her signature on the upgraded room service charge. A selfie she sent him that just happened to have the Hilton logo in the mirror's reflection. You've been waiting for this, she muttered. I shrugged. Let's just say I stopped being your husband the moment you stopped being my wife. Since then, I've been the accountant, keeping track of every debt you've been racking up, emotional and otherwise. She slammed the folder shut. You think this scares me? You think I can't handle a divorce? I leaned in, close enough for her to see the calm in my eyes. I think you have no idea how far ahead I am. That's what I think. We stayed like that for a long moment. Her trying to read me letting her feel the weight of what she didn't know yet. Finally, she broke eye contact, pushed back from the table, and stormed down the hall. I didn't follow. Instead, I poured myself a fresh coffee and let the silence stretch. I'd learned something in the last few weeks. Silence can be the loudest threat of all. She came back 10 minutes later, suitcase in hand. I'm leaving. I raised an eyebrow. Voluntarily? That's new. Her voice was sharp. I need space. To think. Take all the time you need, I said, sipping my coffee. Just know the locks change tonight. Her eyes narrowed. You can't do that. I can, I said simply. And I will. She muttered something under her breath and headed for the door. Hey, Ashley. I called just before she stepped outside. She turned, jaw tight. You should tell Chase to clear his calendar, I said. Something tells me he's going to be busy. She left without another word. The moment the door clicked shut, I exhaled. Not relief, not yet. This wasn't over. This was just the opening move in my game. I sat at the table, the leather folder in front of me, and thought about the next step. I didn't just want her gone. I wanted her exposed. Not out of spite. Out of principle. People like Ashley and Chase, they don't just get to walk away clean. That's when I reached for my phone and opened a draft email I'd been perfecting for weeks. The recipient list was short but powerful. Her boss, a couple of mutual friends, and one HR rep who owed me a favor. The subject line was simple: inappropriate conduct, you decide. I attached 3 photos, a couple of screenshots, and one hotel receipt with a date that matched a company retreat. I didn't hit send, not yet. Timing mattered. This had to land when she'd least expect it. For now, I just saved it and leaned back, letting the chessboard in my mind light up. Every move was planned. Every piece was in position. Ashley thought she was the queen in this game. She didn't realize I'd already made her the pawn. The thing about revenge is that it works best when it doesn't look like revenge at all. Ashley thought I was going to storm into court, wave my evidence folder around like a winning lottery ticket, and drain her in a single strike. But that's the sort of move you make when you want to feel victorious, not when you want to be victorious. I wanted the kind of victory that would stick to her life like gum on the bottom of a shoe, the kind she'd never scrape off, no matter how hard she tried. She'd been gone for 4 days. No texts, no calls, no late-night key in the lock. I figured she was holed up at Chase's place, enjoying the adrenaline of her little rebellion. That suited me fine. The absence gave me space to prepare. The first step wasn't legal, it was financial. Ashley's spending had always been spirited. Designer bags for every season. Weekend getaways disguised as girls' trips. A steady rotation of subscriptions for things she never used after the first week. She loved the idea of having nice things more than the things themselves. And she never paid attention to where the money came from, just that it kept showing up. That was about to change. I called my bank manager, Karen, a woman who'd known me since my first clumsy checking account in college. Karen, I said, I need to restructure a few things. She didn't ask why. She just walked me through moving our joint funds into an account under my name only, leaving the joint one alive, but with a balance that wouldn't cover a sushi dinner. The mortgage autopay? Redirected. Utilities? Switched over to my personal card. If Ashley tried to buy so much as a latte without thinking, she'd get a nice little transaction decline message to start her day. Step 2 was information control. The folder I'd shown her was the tip of the iceberg. In my office, I kept a second binder, the blackout file, containing every password, PIN, and two-factor recovery code linked to anything we shared. While she was out playing house with Chase, I quietly changed them all. Netflix? Gone. Amazon? Locked. The shared Spotify she adored for her morning runs? Access denied. Petty? Sure. But petty is just personal justice in smaller doses. And besides, these weren't random inconveniences, they were reminders. Little flashes in her day that whispered, you're not in control anymore. Step 3 was setting the stage. I had that draft email ready to go, her boss, HR, a couple of friends with big mouths. But timing was everything. Drop the bomb too soon, and she scrambles to contain it. Wait too long, and the heat fades. The sweet spot, right when she thinks she's safe, which meant I needed her to think she'd won. That's where step 4 came in, bait. I sent her a short, polite text on the 5th day. Hope you're well. Let's discuss next steps. I'm willing to be reasonable if you are. It was the kind of message she couldn't resist, an olive branch dipped in honey. Ashley had always liked thinking she could outmaneuver me with charm. I figured she'd read that and picture me softening, maybe even regretting my earlier stance. She replied in under 5 minutes. Coffee tomorrow? Neutral Ground. Neutral Ground turned out to be a cafe near her old yoga studio, the kind of place with reclaimed wood tables and overpriced muffins. I got there early, sat with my back to the wall so I could watch the door. She walked in looking composed. Not guilty, not nervous, composed. That was good. It meant she thought she was in control. She sat, ordered a chai latte, and got straight to it. I think we can keep this civil, she said. No need to ruin each other's lives over something that was inevitable. Inevitable, I repeated. She nodded, sipping her drink like we were discussing the weather. We both knew we'd grown apart. We just didn't want to say it. Now we can, and we can split things clean. No drama. I tilted my head. So you're not contesting the divorce? Not if you don't, she said, leaning back. I don't want to get into who did what. It's just done. I almost laughed. That was her angle. Mutual retreat, no casualties. She wanted to walk away without the world knowing she'd been caught. Without Chase's HR department finding out why he was skipping work trips. Without our friends knowing those girls' trips were really two-person hotel stays. I can agree to that, I said slowly. If you can agree to one thing. Her eyes narrowed. What? You don't touch the retirement accounts. Not a cent. You walk with whatever's in your personal accounts and leave the rest alone. She frowned. That's not how it works, Logan. It's 50-50. It's how it works if you want to keep this civil, I said, matching her tone. She hesitated, calculating. I could almost see the gears turning. Retirement accounts are long-term money, and Ashley's never been patient. Liquid cash was what she wanted. So after a moment, she nodded. Fine, but we put it in writing. Of course. We shook on it, both pretending it was a compromise instead of what it really was, her falling right into place. The next morning, I called Marcus, my lawyer. I gave him the green light to draft the agreement. But I added one more instruction. Hold off on filing it for 7 days. I want to make sure she's comfortable. Marcus didn't ask why. For the next week, I made it easy for her. I was polite over text, quick to agree to small requests, even sent a friendly message about splitting some old furniture. Every word I sent was designed to tell her, see, you're winning. You're getting out clean. Then came the 8th day, 9:13 a.m. My finger hovered over the send button on that draft email. I'd made one small edit overnight, added the date and time of our neutral ground meeting with a note at the bottom. She agreed to forfeit her share of the retirement accounts in exchange for my silence. I thought you'd want to know why. Click. Send. By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Not from Ashley, but from a mutual friend who'd heard from another friend who'd heard from someone at her office. Chase had been pulled into a private discussion with HR. Ashley had left for the day feeling unwell. By evening, I got the text I knew was coming. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. I set the phone down without replying, because the truth was, I'd just made the first of many moves. And Ashley? She was still playing checkers on a chessboard she didn't understand. The net was in place. All I had to do now was pull. The text came in at 9:47 p.m. sharp. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. I didn't reply. In fact, I didn't even open it until the next morning. By then, her words had already aged into something I could read without flinching. Just a brittle little relic from someone who thought they still had teeth. Instead, I scrolled right past it and checked the more interesting messages. One from our mutual friend, Denise, saying, "What did you do?" Ashley's in meltdown mode. Another from my lawyer, Marcus. Her attorney called. She's trying to walk back the retirement agreement. Don't worry, too late. Perfect. You see, people like Ashley have a rhythm. They make a bold move, get hit with the consequences, then scramble to renegotiate after realizing the scoreboard's not in their favor. What she didn't know was that the whistle had already blown. She'd agreed, in writing, with a timestamp, and Marcus had it in triplicate. That morning, I drove into work with the kind of calm you only get when the plan's moving on its own momentum. I wasn't chasing her anymore. I was just steering. Around noon, Denise called. She never calls during work hours unless it's something she's dying to gossip about. She's saying you tried to blackmail her. Denise started, "No hello," just right into the headline. I chuckled. And who's she telling this to? Half her office, apparently. And maybe Chase's wife. That one landed. His wife. Denise hummed. Didn't you know he's married? I leaned back in my chair. Guess I do now. This was better than I'd planned. I'd assumed Ashley and Chase would implode under workplace scrutiny, but if Chase had a wife in the mix, this wasn't just HR drama. This was domestic shrapnel. Do me a favor, I told Denise. If anyone asks you about my part in this, tell them you don't know a thing. Let Ashley spin her own story. Denise laughed. You got it. She's doing a fine job hanging herself anyway. By the end of the day, I'd learned 3 important things. Chase had left the office to deal with personal matters. Ashley's boss had been CC'd on 2 separate complaint emails about inappropriate behavior between her and Chase. The HR rep I'd sent my evidence to had already scheduled follow-up interviews with their entire department. And I hadn't even touched the second binder yet. Day 2 of her unraveling started with a knock on my door. Not Ashley. She wasn't that bold. It was our neighbor, Tom, standing there with a sheepish grin and a manila envelope. This was on my porch by mistake, he said. Looks important. I thanked him and closed the door before opening it. Inside, a thick stack of legal paperwork from Marcus. Final drafts. Ironclad. I knew Ashley would get her copy later today, and the timing couldn't have been worse for her, or better for me. The agreement was as clean as a scalpel cut. I kept the house, retirement, and all primary assets. She got the car in her name, her personal savings, and whatever dignity she could salvage. Marcus had added one last touch I hadn't even asked for, a clause requiring both parties to refrain from disparaging public remarks about the other. If she violated it, she'd pay damages. Considering the way she liked to talk when she was angry, it was a loaded trap just waiting for her to step on it. I didn't have to wait long. By that evening, Denise texted me a screenshot from Facebook. Ashley, wine glass in hand, typing some half-drunk rant about men who can't handle strong women and insecure exes who stalk your life because they can't build their own. She didn't tag me, but she didn't have to. Mutual friends saw it, knew exactly who she was talking about. And that was enough for the claws to snap shut. I sent the screenshot to Marcus. "She's in breach," I typed. His reply was immediate. "On it." On day 3, the collateral damage spread. This time, it was a phone call from Chase's wife. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She spoke with the kind of steady, surgical coldness I recognized in myself. "I know you're the husband," she said. "And I know you sent the email. I'm not calling to complain. I'm calling to compare notes." She had her own folder. Photos, messages, even a few videos. Nothing explicit, but enough to confirm that Chase had been running this playbook on more than one woman at the office. "I'm filing next week," she said. "And I'd like to make sure your wife doesn't come out of this smelling like a victim." That was when I knew I wasn't just steering anymore. I had an ally. We agreed to share timelines, sync our stories if anyone came asking, and, my personal favorite, coordinate when certain pieces of evidence might accidentally become public in their respective social circles. If Ashley thought I was dangerous alone, she was about to see what two angry, methodical people could do when they compared calendars. By day 5, she cracked. It started with a knock I did recognize, sharp, rapid, irritated. I opened the door to find her on the porch, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky, jaw set like she'd been practicing in the mirror. "We need to talk," she said. I stepped aside without a word. She came in, pacing like she was deciding which attack to lead with. "You've poisoned my life," she started. "Chase won't talk to me. People at work are avoiding me. My boss put me on administrative leave for the next 2 weeks. Do you have any idea what that does to my career?" I sat at the dining table, hands folded. "I do." She stopped pacing. "Then stop. You've made your point." I raised an eyebrow. "You think this is about making a point?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't have an answer for that. "This," I said, leaning back, "is about balance. You tipped the scales when you decided to humiliate me. I'm just putting the weight back where it belongs." "You're ruining me," she said quietly. "No," I corrected. "You ruined you. I just documented it." She stood there for a moment, breathing hard. I half expected her to throw something, but instead she pulled off her sunglasses, revealing eyes rimmed red. "You're not the man I married," she said. I smiled. "You're right. The man you married thought loyalty was a two-way street. The man standing here knows better." She didn't reply, just turned and walked out, closing the door harder than she needed to. I watched her go, not with satisfaction exactly, but with the calm of someone who knows the rest of the game is already decided. The cracks were showing, and soon, the whole structure would fall. It started with a photo, not one I took, one I simply forwarded. A selfie of Ashley and Chase from their conference weekend, wine glasses in hand, both of them wearing the smug glow of people who think they're untouchable. I sent it to one person, our mutual friend Julia. Julia, in turn, sent it to everyone. By noon, the photo had made the rounds through 2 group chats, a fantasy football league, and, somehow, the PDA board. Nobody tagged Ashley publicly, but the whispers were enough. I didn't have to say a word. That night, she texted me, "I know what you're doing. Stop." I didn't reply. 2 days later, the local community Facebook page posted a cautionary tale about inappropriate conduct at corporate retreats, complete with a blurred-out version of that exact photo. The comments section was a Shark Tank, and Ashley was bleeding. While she was busy firefighting her social image, I was loading the real weapon, the finance play. Marcus had been quietly filing motions while she scrambled. Remember that breach of agreement clause? We used her wine-fueled Facebook rant to claim damages. The court date came faster than she expected. She showed up with a different lawyer. Cheaper, probably because Chase wasn't footing her legal bills anymore. The judge barely needed 10 minutes. The evidence was black and white. She'd signed, she'd posted, she'd breached. Damages awarded, $42,000. Payable directly to me. When we left the courthouse, she caught up to me in the parking lot. "You're taking everything," she said, her voice cracking. "Not everything," I told her. "Just the parts you thought were yours to keep." Chase's wife kept her word. 3 weeks later, she dropped her own set of photos into the wild. Different hotel, same storyline. This time, the captions weren't polite. They named names. Ashley's administrative leave turned into a mutual parting of ways, which was corporate speak for don't come back. Chase wasn't spared either. He went from golden boy to ghost in under a week. And here's the best part. They didn't even end up together. Turns out, Infidelity is less romantic when you're both unemployed and living off savings that you'd think that would be the end of it. House mine. Accounts mine. Reputation shredded. But I had one last move. Not cruel, just final. 6 months after the divorce papers were signed, I hosted a backyard barbecue. Nothing special. Burgers, beer, a few friends. Among them, Chase's ex-wife. We didn't announce anything. We didn't post anything. But we did let one person take a group photo. And we did let that photo find its way onto Facebook. The image was simple. Me at the grill, Chase's ex-wife laughing next to me. Both of us holding beers like old friends. Ashley saw it. I know because she called me that night. Didn't yell. Didn't cry. Just asked one question. Why? I told her the truth. Because I wanted you to know that the people you step on don't just lie there. Sometimes they stand back up and eat steak in the sun. I hung up after that. And that was it. No big explosion. No final showdown. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing she'd never see me as the man she could humiliate again. Because I'd rewritten the ending and she wasn't in it.